Patrick here. Um, I was doing a vinyl window install with my worker I've known for 25 years. Um, just a couple of days ago. Um, One thing that I've noticed about him, he okay, he was telling me how a long time ago. Okay, this was even before I actually met him. Um, he was somebody was in a truck. Okay, he was handing him a patio door slider. Okay, and I was asking him how big was the slider. Okay, and he told me it was an 8 foot slider. Okay, you have to remember 8 foot sliders probably weigh about, I wouldn't be surprised, 140 pounds. Yeah, that much. Okay, and you're picking up something by yourself. Okay, trying to carry it by yourself, 140 pounds. Okay, I used to, okay, when I was doing service calls before. Okay, I would handle the 8 foot patio door sliders too. Okay, by myself, but I was extremely careful with it. Okay, because I knew how heavy it was. Okay, and when he was taking the patio door slider, his back was twisted a bit. Okay, and the guy in the truck lowered it down to him. Okay, and he didn't even have the weight yet. Okay, and he just let all the weight go, and then basically bam. Okay, all the weight hit his lower back. Okay, he was on WCB for 4 months. Yeah, that long. Okay, they WCB diagnosed it as a muscle strain. Okay, but I could see now. Okay, um, he walks with a bit of a limp. Yeah, and he even uh, cannot bend over for that long. Okay, because on my job site I noticed that, okay, he was caulking a window, and it was only about, I don't know, maybe about 15 minutes. He had to come out because he just couldn't bend anymore. Okay, his back was giving out on him. Okay, um, I was gonna say too, um, doing this sort of work through the years, I okay, if the company I was working for didn't pay me a decent wage, okay, I just wouldn't work for them. Okay, because you have to remember. Okay, I was gonna say that the work is hazardous to your body. Okay, because you've seen that with my worker, right? He's 5 years younger than me. Okay, but I, well, I was gonna say that, um, I can still lift up heavy stuff. Okay, but I don't really like doing it as much anymore, just because I'm just not as strong as I was years ago too, right? Um, because the work is lifting up heavy stuff. Okay, it is hazardous to your body. Okay, if you lift something up improper. Okay, yeah, you could be it could literally end your career in working the trades. Okay, um, I was gonna say that the work is still dangerous. Okay, sometimes you're operating dangerous machinery that can kill you. Okay, um, so I think he was trying to get some compensation from WCB, right? And he just couldn't do it. Okay, um, but if I was doing a job, okay, a 6 foot patio door is kind of like your standard size patio door. A lot of people have them on their homes. Um, if he were trying to carry the patio door from my trailer from the road, okay, inside the customer's house on ground level, okay, I don't think he can do it. Yeah, just because of his back problem. Um, I I didn't think it was that serious until actually seeing him a couple of days ago. Just you know, how much he was struggling. Yeah. Um, Even picking up my ladder, I noticed that, yeah, it looked like, because he's walking with a limp now, right? You have to remember, 25 years ago, I remember that, you know, he had no problems climbing up ladders. He could even, I think, even run up ladders. Okay. He can't do that anymore. And I can't even do that anymore. Um, so, you know, his back is really messed up. Um, because if I was him, okay, I would have never attempted, okay, taking a patio door slider by myself. I would have said, hey, you know, we have to get another guy, um, you know, to you know, carry this 8-foot patio door slider, um, you know, from the truck. Okay. Um, so back to the other story. Yeah. So the 6-foot patio door. Um, Okay, if he were to grab one end and I were to grab one end and we would tip it over so the weight was split, okay, probably he would have about 60 pounds on one side. I would have about 60 pounds on the other side. We'd carry it to from my trailer to the customer's house on ground level. No, I don't think he could do it. Just after seeing him, you know, work for the day, okay, and just seeing, you know, how strong his back was. Because during the day, I was offering to do all the heavy lifting, okay. When we did have to move a heavy object, I would grab the heavier end, okay. But if you were to ask me, you know, could he lift something um, 40 to 60 pounds, you know, by himself now, I would say no, okay. Um, I would think that he would maybe even drop it, okay. You have a serious back injury like that, and you know, he's just in his early 50s, right? Um, I would say that there's just a lot of jobs that, you know, he just cannot do anymore, especially if it required lifting something heavier than 40 pounds, maybe even 30 pounds. Okay. Um, you know, he might be able to lift up something 30 pounds and move it maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet, 6 feet over, right? But to carry it maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 feet from point A to point B, no, he can't do that. I could see him hurting his back even more than, you know, what it is right now. But I would say that, yeah, he has a serious injury, and um, any sort of heavy lifting, I would say that he can't do it anymore. And you know, it would be hazardous for his body, because when you have a back injury, right, you know, should you be lifting something heavy, right? Probably not. Okay. So yeah, I worry about him a bit, just because, well, he's my coworker too, right? I've known him for a lot of years, right? Um, I was mentioning to him that, you know, I know how to do other stuff that, okay, doesn't require a whole lot of heavy lifting, right? And you know, just saying that, you know, I'm willing to uh, you know, start up another type of business and have him work for me, right? And but you know, to lift up anything heavy, I just wouldn't want him lifting up anything heavy. Um, so I'm making this video too for the younger guys that are out there, okay? You know, you have to look after your body, okay? If your boss wants you to lift up something 140 pounds, okay, especially when it's an awkward shape, right? You have to say to yourself, no, I don't want to lift up something that heavy, okay? Because I think it's happening to other guys in the industry too. Um, they just don't know how to lift properly too, right? You're supposed to lift with your legs. They say, you know, lift with your legs, not with your back. But a lot of guys, you know, you know, they don't listen, right? Or they just try to do something beyond their capability, right? and they pull their back, okay? Um, you have to remember, okay, when he injured his back, he was off work for 4 months, okay? That's a fair bit of time to be off work, okay? He's on WCB now, right? And, I'm sure when he came back, okay, he still wasn't at 100%, okay? And he probably, um, didn't want to carry anything that heavy for the next few months, okay? So, you're talking maybe about, 8 months now or 7 months where, you have a worker, okay? Um, See, I feel that the boss should have been watching out for him too, okay? If you see a worker that's, trying to pick up something or carry something 140 pounds by himself, okay? No, you got to step in and say, don't try to lift up something like this by yourself, okay? We get an extra guy over here, okay? And then we both lift it, okay? Maybe even stick some suction cups on it so it's easier to carry, okay? Now you have an injured worker, right? He's off work for 4 months, right? Um, I feel that it's the responsibility of the boss to look out for the workers too. Okay, look out for the workers' safety, right? Of course, the workers have to look out for their own safety too, but the boss has to be smart a little bit too, right? If you see your worker trying to lift up something 100 pounds by themselves, right? You say no, okay? Um, I was gonna say, yeah, it's hazardous. It's dangerous for the body, okay? When you're lifting up something, heavy, right? Um, and like I say, I wouldn't, work for too cheap, from some of these vinyl window companies, when they required me to lift up something heavy, right? I know that um, some jobs, they pay the workers extra, and I think they have a term for it, hazardous pay or something like that, right? I would say that, yeah, anytime you're picking up something heavy, going up ladders with it, or going upstairs with it, yeah, that's hazardous. Okay, you could seriously injure yourself, and um, I would say that, um, my coworker, yeah, um, the work that he was doing, gave him a serious injury. He has a serious injury right now. I don't think he's not getting any help from WCB, you know. And I've heard these stories from other workers too. Um, they got injured on the job site or something like that, right? Um, you have to be careful because nobody's gonna look after your health, you know, um, but yourself sometimes too, right? Um, you have to be, kind of like using your brain too, right? And not trying to pick up something over 100 pounds and carrying it, from point A to point B too, right? Um, because I know how to lift, right? It's you get the weight underneath your legs, right, and you lift with your legs, but that's not always possible because sometimes when I was carrying something heavy, we were bringing it around a winding staircase. You can't get your legs, the weight underneath your legs, and the weight drops onto your back. And then next morning, wow, it feels like somebody ran over your back with something, right? Um, that's why too. Sometimes I was getting arguments with some of my bosses in the past just because um, I was complaining about my back some mornings. I remember going to work and the day didn't even start yet, okay, and my back, I could feel it. It was burning, right? Um, there was pain in there, and it was kind of like a chronic pain, okay? It just wouldn't go away. Um, it was always there, right? And I remember I had this really dumb boss I was telling him about it, and you have to remember, he wasn't doing the work. Okay, he maybe come out, maybe help out for about 1 or 2 hours, um, not that much, okay, during the day, and then he'd go off and do estimates, right? But he wasn't doing the work for 8 hours, okay, and we're also working lots of overtime too. You're talking sometimes extra 20 hours during the week, right? So it's putting a lot of toll on your body, right? Sometimes, yeah, you needed uh, probably a rest sometimes, right? Um, but I was going to acupressure too. Okay, I think I mentioned that to my coworker, but I didn't tell my boss. But if you need some sort of massage or acupressure afterwards, I would say that, yeah. Um, I would say that the wage should be higher, just because you have to go for a massage on your lower back afterwards, right? You have to pay extra money for that, right? So, like I say, I'm making this for educational purposes too. For the younger guys that are in the industry or thinking about getting the industry, right? Because uh, if you don't know how to look after your body properly, yeah, you can either end your career in trades, or even give yourself a serious injury like that, like my coworker, right? um, I don't think his back will ever be the same. He'll be walking with a limp for the rest of his life, okay? And like I say, he's only in his early 50s, and as he gets older, okay, it'll probably get worse, right? I don't think he'll get better, okay? Usually, if you have a serious injury like that, um, it usually gets worse over the years, okay? Um, and I don't think he goes to the physio too, okay? Because I remember when my back started to bother me, I started to go to the physio, okay? And one thing I liked about the physio was she would massage it for a few minutes, okay? And she would get right into the spot. She knew the spot that was irritating my lower back, okay? Because I think it was a disc that in my lower back that had protruded out, and it was pushing on the nerve, okay? And it was causing me pain, okay? So she would put her thumb on the disc, push it back in, and massage it, right? Felt really good, okay? But she was a physiotherapist. I think she knew, she could almost feel where the disc was, okay? And it was quite deep, okay, in the lower back, and she could find it with her thumb and then push it back in, and then massage it, okay? I always wish that she could do it for longer, maybe even 15-20 minutes, right? But the physiotherapists, they only massage it for a few minutes, and then they get you to do exercises there, and sometimes they got some weights there too, right? They show you how to do the exercises, right? But there's I feel that there's a lot of bosses out there too, right? They know that the work is hazardous and they don't want to do it, so they get their workers to do it. If sometimes too, if they get injured, you just get rid of them and get somebody else, okay? That's the nature of the business. Yeah, it almost seems kind of cutthroat a bit, okay? Um, your worker gets injured, okay? Who cares? I'll just get somebody else now, okay? Um, there's lots of guys like that out there too, right? They don't care about their workers. They only care about their bottom line, right? How much money they're going to make from the job. But also too, I know that there's a lot of guys out there that will not work for bosses like that too, right? The reason why I'm telling you this too is because you know, it'll maybe help you, um, you know, the younger guys out there, you know, to choose the right boss, right? Because I've seen a lot of bad bosses out there too, right? And you know, I don't want you guys to, you younger guys, to fall in that sort of trap, right?